bad, good. Howdy, everybody. This is Alejandro with TAMU SEDS, and today we're starting off Spaced Out, the October 4th edition. This is the second week that we're doing our podcast, and so let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. So, first up today is going to go ahead and be the Falcon 9. Lots of stuff going on, or lots of stuff having gone on this past week. So, starting off here, NASA commercial crew tweeted out that SpaceX has delivered the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon components for the in-flight abort test. So, this is Crew Dragon, or at least the internal components of Crew Dragon. Then you've got the actual Falcon 9 booster. It's been reused, so you can see the scorch marks and everything. Legs are taken off, but the engines are still there. Seems to have been either already refurbished or in the process, and they're going to go ahead and start final processing for that so that they can do the in-flight abort test. And that means that basically what they're going to do is just a normal mission, but as it goes through max Q, which is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the rocket will experience during flight, they will go ahead and ignite the in-flight abort motors for the Crew Dragon. So that's these motors right here, which means that basically it'll look something like this, where it'll be flying at Mach 1-ish, and the second it passes through the maximum aerodynamic pressure, those engines will each fire off. That's 8 engines all firing simultaneously, and hopefully the booster survives. But let's face it, when you have that much power flying through the air and then all of a sudden, boom, there's an event, the booster might not survive. So the crew capsule at least will survive, or that's the hope, and that's the design of this test, to make sure that the parachutes, that the in-flight abort rocket motors, guidance system, everything works as intended, so that in case the booster itself has an anomaly, much like the Soyuz booster last year, if anything like that happens with the booster, then the astronauts will go ahead and get out of Dodge really quick and stay safe. So looking forward to that. Hopefully it'll be sometime in the next couple months, but we'll be watching that no earlier than schedule from SpaceX to make sure that we're all on the same page for watching that live stream, because it's going to be one hell of a live stream to watch. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic of conversation. We've got something going to the moon. That's right. So right here, Intuitive Machines 2 days ago announced that they are selecting SpaceX to be launching on the Falcon 9 their rocket, the Nova C. So the Nova C is this little rocket lander. Let's bring it up right here on Wikipedia. It's about 10 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and this thing will be launching on top of the Falcon 9. It's using a liquid methane, liquid oxygen rocket motor, and it will be utilizing the same kinds of technologies that were developed in the Project Morpheus lander that NASA was playing around with in the early 2010s. And this lander's purpose is to fulfill parts of the Commercial Lunar Payload Services contract that NASA floated, and that means that it will be able to launch small payloads to the surface of the moon for deployment. So that's commercial payloads, science payloads, basically like a CubeSat launcher, like Rocket Lab. But instead of doing a rocket launcher, they're actually making a lander to go onto the moon. As it says here, SpaceX's ability to make low-cost, quality lunar transport is paramount to completing NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services contract. So yeah, that's why they chose the Falcon 9 and just like that, SpaceX also announced a couple weeks ago, I believe, that they're going to be doing multiple commercial payload launches for CubeSats, starting in the lower millions of dollars for launch contracts, which is a significant decrease in terms of price compared to other rocket launchers. And the schedule for this is that they'll be planning to launch this on top of a Falcon 9 in 2021. So hopefully this goes off without a hitch, because it'd be really nice to see some commercial lunar projects get off the ground. We had the Israeli lander that unfortunately had an anomaly during its landing process and didn't actually land. And then we had Chandrayaan-2, which didn't really succeed. The orbiter component did succeed, but the lander apparently had a hard landing, and while they are saying that it survived the landing, we don't really know in what condition the lander is in, and it certainly isn't able to provide scientific data or information about its own condition. So hopefully this project succeeds and we get to have something on the surface of the moon that isn't, a government lander. It'll be really, really awesome, and can't wait to see that go off. And then next one is going to be about the Mars rover. So as you guys might know, NASA's been working on the twin of the Curiosity rover. I don't know if you guys know, but Curiosity has a twin. They were planning two separate rovers based off of basically the same design. And what they're planning on doing is learning from the mistakes of, well, quote unquote, the mistakes of Curiosity. Basically just lessons learned from the launch, the building process, the landing, and then the general operation of Curiosity, which has been on the surface of Mars for, I think, 2.5 years. Let me check that. Let's see. Landed on Aeolus Palus inside Gale, or the Gale crater, on August 6th, 2012. Okay, my bad. It's been roving around for 7 years. That is a long time. Whoops. Gosh. Yeah, that's a long ass time. It has been on Mars for 2,546 sols. Wow, that is a very, very long time. So yeah, they're going to be taking that 7+ years of data and basically collating it to figure out what could they build better in terms of the rover design, the operations. I myself have spoken to a couple people who are working on the project, and they're saying that they're going to be working on how to drive the rover and the automated systems that allow the rover to go around obstacles and do science better. And yeah, so this article basically is talking about the tests that they're doing to make sure that everything is fitting correctly. Basically fitment checks between the descent stage and the lander. So as you guys might remember, Curiosity landed using a completely new kind of landing system where essentially what would happen, and this is from ABC News' coverage in 2012 of the landing, of the specifically 7 minutes of terror. So basically what they're going to do is come in and you'll have entry into the atmosphere from orbital speed. Parachute will deploy, you have the descent vehicle, and then out of the descent vehicle, a kind of crane right here, which is this component right there. This crane is going to kind of use rockets to hover in the air above the ground and basically drop this rover down onto the ground. As you can see, the cables are over there, and this is called a sky crane maneuver, and multiple people have tried it, both successfully and most definitely unsuccessfully in things like Kerbal Space Program, and of course Curiosity successfully pulled off the maneuver in 2012. So we know that this kind of maneuver and the process and the technology works. But for the Curiosity rover, or for the Curiosity's Rover 2020 twin, what they're going to be doing is also testing new technology. this entry, descent, and landing process is going to be including some new sensors and new software that'll allow it to achieve a bit better in terms of accuracy. So as you can see, it'll have something called a range trigger. So for smaller, more accurate landing ellipses. Curiosity's landing region shown as an example. So this was Gale Crater, and the proposed landing ellipse is right there. You have the range trigger ellipse right there. So let's see, all about timing, shaving off the commute, haha, funny. And then included will also be terrain relative navigation. So let me see here. The risks of landing, yeah. So this is going to be able to navigate using the sky crane, the terrain, to make sure that it's not kind of like how Apollo 11 landed on the moon, where the computer was kind of putting it towards a crater with a lot of boulders. Neil Armstrong took physical control over the lander, and with the little bit of fuel that he had left, he maneuvered the lander over the boulders and over to a flat area of landing space. So this is going to be a software equivalent that basically scans the terrain and makes sure that the spot that they're trying to aim for is not detrimental to the rover itself, or won't damage it. And if it is somewhere that's a little bit dangerous, it'll maneuver the sky crane a little bit and make sure that it lands in a correct spot that's all sunshine and rainbows, no boulders around here. And then it'll also have let's see, Medli 2. I have no idea what that means. MSL entry, descent, and landing instrumentation. Oh, so the second generation of the sensors. So yeah, definitely a cool piece of tech. The tests apparently went well, so they're taking apart the whole lander sky crane assembly and separating it until final processing next year, when they next spring, when they start processing it and putting it together for the final launch procedures. And this photo was taken over at NASA JPL over at Caltech. All those guys watching their baby get put together and then hopefully sent to Mars, and hopefully it'll succeed and land correctly. This is going to be a pretty insane thing, just like Curiosity, but of course, nothing in space is technically routine, and especially with Mars landings, I think less than 50% of landings on Mars for rovers and landers and stuff like that have ever been successful. So hopefully we achieve a 100% success rate with this set of rover designs, the two twins, just like Spirit and Opportunity. So yeah, definitely kudos go out to the engineering team over there, and I'm definitely looking forward to watching that launch. It says here that they're looking for a launch on a Atlas V rocket in July of 2020. So who knows? Maybe I'll go and catch the launch. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over next topic. And the next topic is going to be, let's see, the ESA's Moon Village. That's right. You heard that right. It is a project that is being explored and has been quietly developed for the last 5-ish years by the European Space Agency. And what they're doing is they're putting together the plan and and kind of figuring out what technologies they'll need and have to design, and setting a roadmap for a fully functional moon village / city / lunar colony. And the article is right here. It goes into a little bit of detail about like what they want. They're looking into the location, looking at the general design of each building. As you can see, this cutaway, a quote, "This cutaway shows the interior of a 3D printed section of ESA's planned moon village." So I read it a little bit earlier, and basically what they're going to do is have inflatable modules and deliverable modules from Earth that'll be carried on spacecraft, set up on the surface of the moon, and then they're going to take 3D printing, in situ resource utilization products. So basically, just taking the regolith and 3D printing kind of a concrete, not really concrete, but a form of aggregate-based material over this kind of module. And what they're going to do is basically make it into a protected little moon building, so that it's kind of underground and protected from the radiation of space, both intergalactic and solar, but you don't necessarily have to drill a hole down into the ground. You'll just have to deliver this module and then have a robot, dump a lot of dirt on top, in a simplified expression. So yeah, this is going to be super cool. They said that they want to do it by the next decade or two. Kind of out there in terms of the timeline, but it's nice to see that they're making some progress. And there's a whole bunch of different programs and plans and ideas, initiatives by different government organizations as well as commercial organizations to try and build a moon base. And this has been going on ever since Apollo was midway through its project and even almost done with its project. I mean, even before Apollo, Werner von Braun, he was leading some teams on prolonged habitation of bases both on the moon and in space. And so this isn't new necessarily. We've seen a lot of different concepts come out in the last few decades. What's exciting about this is the fact that there's a lot of interest about this. They've been developing it for multiple years, so there's obviously a commitment towards making this a reality. You've got commercial operators like Blue Origin and SpaceX developing launching technologies capable of launching huge payloads to the moon and Mars, but in this case specifically the moon. So you're going to need that to send these kinds of modules that are large volume, large weight, mainly large volume, but also the weight. You have to send a lot of machinery up there, generators, energy or batteries for energy storage and stuff like that. You're going to have to send people, so there's lots of supplies. And then, of course, the machines that actually build or that actually 3D print the covering for these modules, that's going to be a bit difficult. So, all of these different things are coming together to make kind of a perfect storm. So it's nice to see that ESA is preparing for that and taking advantage, kind of like just riding the wave, so to speak, and joining, I guess, NASA in the plan. NASA, on the other hand, of course, earlier this year, I believe, yes, NASA released their own strategy, the Artemis project, earlier this year, which should have us on the moon with a sustained human presence, both in orbit using the Lunar Gateway, as well as an actual base on the moon by 2028. And that includes building the SLS, building a lunar rover, lunar lander, the Lunar Gateway, all of that within the next 5 to 6 years, and then starting to deploy somewhere around here, 2020, the mid to late 2020s. So, yeah, I guess it'll be a bit of a race to see who gets there first in terms of the countries, but you have SpaceX and Blue Origin who are coming after them, so who knows? I think what I'm most interested in is the idea, and it's mentioned here. Let's see. This is, let's see, quote, though Warner's comments gave the Moon Village concept its initial momentum, since then much of the cooperation and planning for the lunar outpost has been spearheaded by the Moon Village Association, a non-governmental organization with about 150 members spread across nearly 36 countries. So this is the part that's got me super excited, because, and it was kind of mentioned in SpaceX, in Elon Musk's Starship update. More on that in a little bit. The entire idea of building, and kind of the operating procedure for a lot of these different organizations, has been that if anyone builds something on the moon, due to the space treaties of the 1970s and later on, these moon bases are going to be basically like Antarctica, where they're operated by multiple countries. There's no such thing as a, specific ownership of the land. It's just going to be an international collaboration, much like Antarctica, much like the International Space Station, where no one really owns the entire thing. You can own components, but like those are kind of international waters, as most people would say. And I think that's interesting because it means that if this succeeds, then we'll have a base on the moon that is operated not as a singular nation, so it won't be the product of national, or it won't be affected by politics specifically, regarding, you can't use this because it's mine, I don't want to deal with you, only my allies can use it. It'll be nice to see just everyone collaborate on this project, because obviously, space is for everybody, and having more perspectives from all around the world is definitely good, and pushing into space as humans instead of as nations should be the goal. So I like the fact that it's a multinational effort, promoting the same kinds of ideals as the International Space Station and, as I said, Antarctic bases. So finally, location. This is pretty cool too. They're going to try and put it near the, or they're thinking of putting it near the Shackleton crater, which is apparently near the South Pole. So Shackleton crater moon. So, yep, lies at the south pole of the moon. The peaks along the crater's rim are exposed to almost continual sunlight, while the interior is perpetually in shadow. So I guess here's a map. Shackleton, wow, so it's basically at the South Pole. That's really cool. So you'll be able to have there should be water ice down there, so you can use the water as kind of supplies for both making fuel and also for water for people. Then of course you have solar panels that can be all around here and will be continuously lighted, so maybe just along the rim, stuff like that. So definitely a cool place to go, and maybe one day I'll go visit. Sip a nice soda on the rim, set up my lawn chair. Plus retirement's going to be easy too. You don't have to worry about joint pain and stuff like that. You'll have to worry about your bones wasting away, but I mean, what are you going to do? It's space. Maybe we can develop some kind of medicine that continuously regenerates your bones. That would be super cool. But then you might get bone cancer or something like that, where it just keeps growing and turns your legs into giant tumors. That would suck. All right. So, next topic. Earlier this year, NASA was going to do the first all-female spacewalk, but it kind of fell apart, unfortunately, because NASA didn't have enough time to get a second medium-sized spacesuit ready. So obviously, biologically speaking, of course, men and women have different sizes usually. Women are usually a little bit smaller, at least in the human race. And so, therefore, NASA has always had a bit of an issue making different spacesuit sizes. I mean, they had this issue before, but it came to a head earlier this year when they were trying to do the first all-female spacewalk, and they didn't have two correctly sized spacesuits on hand for both women on the station at the time. So they had to cancel that and replace one of the women with a dude on the station. And let's just say that the media outlash was swift and frenzied. Well, those are exactly this. Those are pretty much the same thing. Was very swift and very loud. Everyone was kind of like, "Wow, really, guys? Can't do this." Yeah, lots of people have had their opinions and this, that, and the other thing, and then kind of just disappeared for a little while. But now, NASA says that they're going to be able to have another go at it. So right now on the station are astronauts Christina Cook and Jessica Meir, and then so they're going to be going up on the 21st of October to plug in some new batteries. This will be the 4th of 5 spacewalks involving battery work. Wow. So I guess in space, not even in space can you escape having to recharge your batteries. Salty iPhone user over here. Anyway, yeah, so they're going to be going up on October 21st. Well, they're already in the station. They're going to be going out into the open on October 21st. So that's going to be pretty cool. Definitely catch that on NASA TV. Let's see. Maybe I can find... Oh, never mind. Now, you can find some more information, definitely. NASA will put out some statements, this, that, and the other thing. They'll put out a press release right before so that everyone can watch it. It's going to be super cool. Definitely a step forward for having or including women in aerospace and space and science in general. And, it's going to be super awesome. Yeah. On to the next news topic. All right. Having to open up these windows. So, this topic is a little bit reaching back, definitely. Reaching way back, actually. So, this reaches back to Cassini. So, if you guys don't know, NASA's Cassini-Huygens project was launched in the launched in 1997, and this project was a lander-orbiter combo. Basically, Cassini's this mission was designed kind of like the Galileo missions and kind of like the Juno mission now, where its entire intent was to study Saturn and its rings and its system of moons. I mean, Jupiter and Saturn together are basically smaller solar systems in terms of how many moons there are. I know Jupiter has over 60, Saturn has 40 or 50. So, let's see. 62 moons. Wow. That's a lot of moons. That's a lot of moons. Wait, how many does Jupiter have? Jumping off topic here. 79. Wow. I thought it had like 60 something and then Saturn. Okay, whatever. Back on topic. Cassini was designed to go and spend basically, a decade spending 13 years orbiting Saturn and studying all of its moons and stuff like that. Now, one of the most important aspects of this mission was that it was going to study the moons. It wasn't going to land on any of them except for Titan. We'll get to that in a second. But it would do flybys, use its instruments to do remote sensing, and we can gather data. We would then gather data on those moons. Huygens was the lander that went on to Titan. So Titan is the largest moon of Saturn. It has a thick atmosphere of methane, mainly hydrocarbons, mainly methane, and it's very interesting because of a lot of different reasons that we'll get into in a little while when we talk about Starship. But basically, they landed a small rover on it, and it was definitely a big hubbub. There was definitely a big hubbub about it when it actually achieved that. But something that got less news attention until much later in the mission, pretty much after the mission actually ended in 2017, was this aspect of the mission, studying Enceladus. So Enceladus is an ice moon, much like Europa, where you have an ocean underneath a thick layer of ice. So we're talking, a few dozen kilometers of ice that stretch from the surface, of course, down to almost to the rocky surface, in air quotes, surface. But in between this ice and the surface, because of the warmth given off by the core of the planet, many scientists, pretty much all of them, but we'll leave some dissent there. But basically, everyone agrees that there's probably a giant ocean hiding underneath these giant ice sheets, both on Europa as well as Enceladus. Now, regarding Enceladus, Cassini actually passed through the ice plumes that apparently are shooting out like giant, mega-sized, supercharged geysers that shoot many, many miles into space. There's no atmosphere, of course, so there's no drag, and the moon itself is pretty small, so these geysers are shooting dozens of miles into space. And so when the spacecraft, when the engineers who were operating Cassini found out that they were going to pass by Enceladus, obviously they would do a little bit of a maneuver so that the flyby would come within shooting distance of this planet. And so between that and also gathering some of the ice or some data on the ice, this article says that was in the E ring. So Saturn's E ring. So Saturn's rings are all designated by different letters, and you have over here Cassini division. I wonder if that's named after. No, that's probably not named after the. What am I thinking? Not named after the probe walls. Yeah, so the E ring is out here. Let's go ahead. Enceladus, yep. The E ring goes all the way out to Titan. Oh wait, no, Titan is over there. Oh, I guess okay, yeah. From the inner rings over to Titan, all the way that way. Yeah, basically Cassini passed through these rings, and the ice that gets shot up by these plumes settles into this ring, so that when you pass through the ring, you can actually gather some data. And what they've been going over are the particulate matter and the dust analysis from this ring, using the ion and neutral mass spectrometer data, as well as the data from the cosmic dust analyzer on Cassini, or that were on Cassini. It got dunked into the atmosphere of Saturn by NASA in 2017, burned up in the atmosphere. Basically Viking funeral in space. But anyway, they went over these organic compounds and found that these are pretty much the same kinds of compounds that you would find in early Earth, and they're hypothesizing that these compounds are coming from geothermal vents. As you can see here, these red spots, those geothermal vents are basically like geothermal vents here on Earth. You go down miles under the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, Indian Ocean, whatever, and you'll find these geothermal vents where, for eons, you have the molten magma of the Earth's outer core, heating up some lava and rock underneath the bed of the ocean, and that'll create a lot of heat, a lot of steam, and that'll shoot out all of these chemicals, rocks, minerals, building blocks of life that then settle on and around these geothermal vent regions. And you'll see, like, on Earth, geothermal vent ocean. Yeah. words. Oh, wait, my preferences, what? Geothermal vents, Pacific Ocean. My typing is crappy. So, yeah, you'll see something like this, where you have these giant vents, but around the vents are, hundreds of thousands of different little critters, different organisms. These are, I forgot exactly what they're called, tube something. Tube worms, or I think, where, they're feeding off of the heat, the minerals, the acids that are popping out of this vent. All that smoke is not really smoke. It's just, steam, minerals, vitamins, all of that. Well, vitamins and minerals. Just building blocks of life, or organic compounds that eventually turn into organic life. And so the idea that these these vents, not geothermal vents, but these vents and geysers that are shooting all of this vapor and all of this ice into space are at the surface and shooting off of those compounds means that those compounds must be really, really all over the place in the ocean, which means that maybe Enceladus's geothermal activity is massive, which would lend credence to the theory that there may be life hiding under this ice sheet. We obviously don't know because we've never been there, but Europa, there is a mission in the works right now, I believe, the Europa Clipper, that will go and study Europa. So I don't know. I think the Europa lander was, there we go, set for launch in 2025. Developed to study the Galilean moon Europa through a series of flybys. Originally, I believe that they were thinking of doing a lander, but the budget was too small, so they decided to just use the orbiter component. And hopefully that data will then help us learn how to go to somewhere like Enceladus and discover life. Who knows? Maybe we'll send a submarine down there and meet some crazy fish society, like, I don't know, an extraterrestrial Atlantis from, what's it called? Aquaman. Yeah. And I guess before that, the original Disney movie, Atlantis. Who knows? That'd be super cool. Of course, planetary protection over at NASA, which usually does these studies on how to make sure we don't contaminate other planets, they're going to have a field day trying to prevent us from doing anything stupid over there. So hopefully they'll let us do it. If not, then we'll just have to make do with sitting on top of the ice and going, I guess, ice fishing. Though I don't know if you can really get like a hook, line, and sinker that'll go down, 30 miles. And then you'll have to drill through the ice at first. So, I don't know. Anyway, speaking of Saturn, wow, isn't that pretty? Yes. So, this weekend, the main thing that I'd like to cover in this podcast is the Starship presentation. And that refers to the update that was given by Elon Musk this previous Saturday evening, where Elon described his current plans and SpaceX's current plans for the Starship project. And Starship is SpaceX's initiative to create an interplanetary spacecraft capable of going to other planets and carrying humans and letting humanity become, quote, an interplanetary species. So, starting off, the presentation included an overview of their current Starship Mark 1 prototype, which is this. It stands about 180 feet tall, about 55 meters. It has 3 Raptors that are strapped to the bottom. They're not plugged in and ready to rock, but they're there, and they're being fitted so that this stack, as he described during the presentation, will launch from Boca Chica and go, and this is not a typo, 20 kilometers into the atmosphere. So about 65,000 feet. Yeah. What is it? 20 times 1.67, right? Oh, wait, no. 20 kilometers, 33. Oh, no, kilometers, right. 20, or I'm trying to do how many feet based off the kilometers, and I'm completely botching it. So, you know what? I'll save face and just not do it. Yeah, isn't that the great part about, yeah. Story of my math career. Anyway, back to the presentation. So he went over the general gist of their program right now, which is to develop that Starship Mark 1 prototype into this Starship. So let me just bring up the video here. So this is, you can catch this on the SpaceX actual YouTube channel, but this is the final product. And he said that this is a typo. This is supposed to be 120 tons. We'll see how close they get to it. They said that they're hopefully going to get to around 100 tons, you know, if a miracle happens, but whatever. Anyway, ship length, 50 meters, body diameter, 9 meters, so 50... Yeah, so 165 feet long, about 30 or so feet wide, propellant mass of 1,200 tons, ascent payload 150 tons. That's right. Basically the equivalent of the Saturn V's low Earth orbit capacity. And it'll be able to return 50 tons of cargo to the surface of the planet Earth. That is a lot. Which, actually, Space Shuttle return cargo capacity. Payload to LEO. Let's see. Landing gear. Dry mass, launch mass. I forgot how much it would be able to take down. I think it was like something like 20 something tons. I'm not completely sure. Either way, significantly, you know, this is basically, you know, supersized space shuttle in terms of cargo capacity, and that's not even mentioning the fact that this front section is entirely pressurized volume right here up until around, I think around there. Everything after that is fuel tanks and control stuff, avionics, all of that. And so this entire area is pressurized cargo volume or cabin volume. And that is impressive, to say the least. Because that means that, at least that's what he said, was around 1,000 cubic meters of space is pressurized, which is just insane. You know, 1,000 cubic meters, not necessarily like, I think he described it once as an A380 launching every time. Not that much. But what it is essentially the space station launching every single time. So the space station has about an equivalent amount of pressurized volume, which means that every time you launch one of these, you're essentially launching another space station worth of space. So that's just mind-boggling. So, you know, a couple of these strapped together, you know, docking ports here and there, and you've essentially got, you know, Wernher von Braun's dream space station. It's insane. And it can go anywhere, too. That's something else. Like that photo that I now have as my background, this photo right here, this is not an exaggeration. SpaceX says that after Mars, which is their target, after Mars, or after landing on Mars, they're planning to open this Starship system up for contracts for organizations to take it to places like Saturn, places like Jupiter, other worlds that previously, up until now, were, you know, pot shots, you know, pie in the sky dreams for mission planners that, you know, basically the brief for the meeting goes like this. You have a fantastical ship with an unknown budget, plan a mission to Saturn. Well, Elon Musk is about to give us the ship, and that is Starship. The plan includes, let's see, let me go ahead and find this. Nope. Okay. He doesn't go into detail until over here. There we go. It'll be propelled by 6 engines, 3 of which are sea-level Raptor engines, which were already attached. Let me go ahead and go down. These sea-level Raptors, and then it'll also have 3 more vacuum-optimized Raptor engines. And that means, let's see, that means that these engines will be capable of taking, or having higher efficiency once in a vacuum. As you can see here, about 25 seconds more of ISP. A little bit more thrust too, so 220 tons instead of 200. And then this entire thing will be protected by a heat shield. Rugged ceramic tiles for maximum heating areas. Basically, it'll be covered kind of like the space shuttle, but with a more advanced heat shield. And then the underlying structure of the spacecraft will be made out of this kind of stainless steel. So that, as I explained in the general meeting and to some of the members, the stainless steel was chosen, and I quote here from Elon, it was his best engineering design decision, if not in a while, if not ever, then at least in a very long time. This stainless steel will allow the back end of those heat tiles to be, the tiles will be able to be thinner, because the back end of those heat tiles is the most important part. The front, you can do anything with the front. You can make it, kind of heat resistant. As long as it survives, it's fine. But the reason why you have to have a thick set of tiles or a thin set of tiles, don't know what your design decision is there, but the reason why you need to focus on the thickness is that the heat transfer needs to be kept low enough that the back shield is kept okay and structurally sound. With carbon fiber, you would have had to have a lot of tile in between the plasma and of reentry and the actual airframe, because you can't have more than 300 or 400 degrees Celsius of temperature. Otherwise, the carbon fiber would disintegrate and lose its structural integrity. The stainless steel, on the other hand, is capable of withstanding over 1,000 degrees centigrade while still retaining most of its structural rigidity, which means that you can make the tiles thinner, lighter, require less refurbishment, thereby maintaining the reusability of this system, which is the goal, all while making sure that this spaceship won't melt on the way through the atmosphere. And let's see. There should be a photo. No, there wasn't a photo there. So upon re-entry, these flaps right here are going to be, maneuvering along the long axis right there to basically fly, to guide the Starship through the atmosphere, much like a skydiver. So it's going to be basically falling belly first into the atmosphere, and it'll use these flaps to maintain a level heading, so to speak, and then finally it'll use the engines to boost itself and flip itself over so as to actually land on its tail. And that's shown in these photos right here. So you have the Starship coming down to land like there, and you can see these legs. So these little bumps are the housings for the legs. There's 6 in total, 2 in the wings, or flaps, my bad, and then 4 in the little nacelles on the side. And then, yeah, so he went over, the general plan of how they're going to achieve this, different timetable targets that they're looking for. They're looking to see if they can do orbit within 6 months, which means that they'll be going through Marks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Starship prototypes, starting with the 65,000 foot, 20 kilometer Starship Mark 1 flight. Let's see. Yeah, so this one going to 20 kilometers, and then they'll build a Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, and hopefully by Mark 4 they reach orbit. Now, the reason why they're waiting to do orbit is because to do orbit they're going to try this, or try launching it on top of this behemoth. That's right, Super Heavy. So Super Heavy is massive. This thing will be 68 meters long. So that's 68 times 2.3. So it's about 225 feet tall. The grid fins are going to be like 40 feet long. According to Elon, they'll be making it out of cast iron, or welded steel, my bad. It'll have 6 landing legs / fins. He said in the presentation that they're just landing legs, but let's face it, with those aerodynamic fins on top, you're going to have a lot of interference with the flow of the air, and your center of pressure for the whole rocket stack is going to be shifted higher. So you're going to need some stabilizing fins on the bottom. So that's probably, an added benefit of the rocket, of the landing fins. And so the idea is that this will be propelled by 37 Raptor engines. That's not a typo. 37 engines producing more than twice the thrust of a Saturn V. When this thing takes off, it's going to be an event, to say the least. And so, as you can see here, this is an engine test that they showed off here. I don't want to put on the sound, but yeah, this is one Raptor. Multiply that by 37 and you have an idea of what it's going to look like. Just absolutely insane. And let's see if we can skip forward a little bit. This is the stack as a whole in comparison. So you have Human here, this tiny little pixel. You have Starhopper, the Millennium Falcon. You have Starship Mark 1, which is the rocket that I showed you previously, and the full stack, which is Starship up here, the final version of Starship, and then you have Super Heavy. So yeah, and then he goes on to talk a little bit about the plans for how they're going to use Starship, what they want in terms of building a Mars base, setting up a colony on Mars that as their end goal, and then landing on Mars. Well, actually no, he didn't mention landing on Mars, though we all know that he wants to do it by the end of the 2020s. He did say that he wants to make orbit with people, not just orbit, but with people, with this whole stack by the end of 2020. Probably not going to happen, but we'll believe him until he proves us wrong. Because, the opposite. Take a grain of salt, because it's, of course, Elon time. So I'll say probably mid-2021 is a better estimate for when they'll be able to hit orbit with people. Maybe even late 2021. Of course, anomalies happening for launch are going to change that schedule. So if that happens, God forbid, we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, the optimistic timeline is that by the end of 2021, we will have a fully operational, full stack of Super Heavy and Starship launching from Boca Chica or Cape Canaveral and deafening everybody within 30 miles. So that's going to be crazy. Yeah. So I think that's it. Yeah. Then he goes into a little bit of a question and answer session all the way until the end. I suggest you guys watch the video. It's an hour and a half long, definitely worth the time. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. This is going to be the end of the live stream. I might do a little bit of Kerbal, don't know, but yeah. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you guys next week.